Guys, quick pre-fight video, prediction video ahead of Chris Algieri versus Errol Spence. Let me say, these two guys, in many ways, polar opposites. Errol Spence, the golden prospect of the sport, Olympian, touted by Floyd Mayweather, technician, you know the story. Chris Algieri, a guy who's come up having done kickboxing, I believe, maybe it's martial arts, but having fought in other combat sports, up until recently had a trainer who appeared to be nothing more than a fitness trainer. Chris Algieri doesn't have the amateur background, the Olympic pedigree of a guy like Errol Spence. And Errol Spence has looked very, very tidy on the way up. One of the most touted prospects out there, I think it's fair to say. And a guy who, really, really does look to have the goods. Has power, precision, inside game, outside game. A guy who's really turning heads and appears to be progressing in the right direction. What I think is interesting with this fight is Chris Algieri has really shown great versatility in his boxing career of late, specifically since when he signed with John David Jackson as a new trainer. Chris Algieri, possibly most famous for his win over Ruslan Provodnikov, where he used the ring so well, moved, boxed on the back foot, trying to pot shot and outmaneuver Ruslan Provodnikov and doing a fantastic job of it. More recently, pouring the pressure on Amir Khan, chasing him around the ring, trying to force the pace, trying to get in the pocket and trying to have the fight up close and force the action. What's interesting about Chris Algieri is he has become a very, very versatile fighter who can fight in completely opposed styles. And I think that's potentially relevant here. Chris Algieri may not have the, he's got the win over Provodnikov, but in his other AA grade fights, Amir Khan, Manny Pacquiao, he's come up short both times. But I think it's fair to say that he's emerged with credit on every occasion for surviving the Manny Pacquiao fight, even though he was hurt, for outpointing Ruslan Provodnikov after a troubled start, and for really causing Amir Khan a lot of problems in a fight that some people actually thought Chris Algieri deserved to get the nod in. Errol Spence, he looks great, but this is a major step up for Errol Spence. This is a major step up, and Chris Algieri is going to be a different level of opponent to what he's fought before. For my money, Algieri is going to be best served in this fight by using the ring. Errol Spence seems to be very tidy up close. This is a guy with an inside game. I don't think Algieri is going to be best served fighting with the tactics he fought against Amir Khan, against Errol Spence. I'd actually like to see a return to the Ruslan Provodnikov days. I'd like to see him using the ring, trying to pick Spence off from range, trying to outmaneuver him, and trying to cause him problems from that sense. I think Errol Spence is a very, very skilled inside fighter and chess player, and I think that outside game of Chris Algieri's, that movement, that jab, that range, has more potential to cause Errol Spence problems than forcing the pace on him personally. It's a major step up for Errol Spence, and for what it's worth, I think the bookmakers have got this fight wrong. I've seen Algieri 8-1 in some places, which I don't think is reflective at all of his chances in this fight. Chris Algieri's live in this fight. My concern is, with Chris Algieri, we know his limitations. We've seen him dropped in fights on multiple occasions. We've seen proof of the fact that he doesn't really seem to carry game-changing power. And sometimes he still fights like a guy who hasn't got the the strongest amateur credentials, which clearly will be the case given his history. Errol Spence, he's an unknown at present. If he beats Chris Algieri, it'll be a step up in class, and he'll become a more proven individual. Chris Algieri's in that conversation of top 10, top 15 at welterweight, which will be the first time that Errol Spence has fought someone of that nature. My inclination here is to side with Spence on upside. All of the hype surrounding Spence, all of the history, that Olympic pedigree, the way he's come up, the way he's took care of business, the eye test that he's passed, fundamentally suggests that he's going to have a higher upside than Chris Algieri. Chris Algieri's a really interesting fighter. He's someone I enjoy watching, very versatile, very entertaining, but essentially we're talking here about someone who should be an elite technician versus someone who came to the sport very, very late. And because of that, the upside, the potential, the future, the momentum is all with Errol Spence. And I side to Errol Spence here. But it's narrow. It's a close choice. And it's an unsure choice based on not having seen Errol Spence with the form in the book. I'm picking Errol Spence. I think Chris Algieri could give him some problems. I think Algieri's best bet is to move, to use the ring. And if he does, he could make Errol Spence look bad in a few points because he can be a tricky man to beat. I'm going with Errol Spence. If I was having a bet on the fight, Chris Algieri from a value perspective has to be looked at. But in terms of prediction, Errol Spence to win, I'm going to go points. Chris Algieri is a real tough guy. He's extremely fit. He's athletic, and he's shown before in the Pacquiao fight, in the Provodnikov fight, he can come through tough situations and have the heart, have the chin to fight on, to get back up off the floor, and to avoid being stopped. So I'm going Errol Spence, maybe 8 rounds to 4 points, something of that nature. I think Chris Algieri will ask a few questions and go the distance. Let me know your thoughts. How do you see this fight? I'll be very, very impressed if Errol Spence wins by stoppage. If you're new to the channel, please do hit subscribe. Many thanks for watching.